You are listening to an MLGA Network podcast. Welcome to Make Liberty Great Again, the best damn Liberty podcast that you've never heard of. Chuck and I will be your guides as we peer into the ridiculous reality that is our society and our government. Let's get to it. Welcome to Make Liberty Great Again. I'm your host, Cam Harless, and with me, for now and always, is Chuck, the body's in the trunk, DeGroot. How you doing, Chuck?
Can't complain. Actually, pretty fired up today because I did my federal theft returns.
Oh.
Is that what you call them? Yep. Returns? I don't know. I filed for federal theft, and every time I do that, every year, I'm not looking forward to it. And then when I do it, I'm pissed off for the rest of the day. So, that's the Chuck that you get today.
Did they get you pretty good this year?
Last year, I don't know why, but I was one of the ones that really got a nice refund from whatever, changes Trump enacted. This year, I'm still getting a decent refund, but not quite what it was last year. And I actually owe the state money, the South Carolina. I owe some money to South Carolina, which is pretty frustrating. I don't know what changed there, but I'm self-employed, so I have to do the estimated taxes every quarter, which you have to do now, right?
I just kind of save a certain percentage of my money and hope for the best.
Yeah, so I pay the estimated every quarter. So I never owe anything at the end of the year. I always get something back. But just because I'm self-employed and I have a little bit of a complex tax situation, it takes a while to do. And it's so frustrating. If you're going to steal from us, at least make it easy on us.
Yeah.
Don't make us do a ton of work.
Send a bill.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like that meme out there. So how do taxes work? And it's like, oh, well, you do your taxes, and they're like, oh, do they send you the amount that you owe? Oh, no. So do they know the amount you owe? Oh, definitely. So what happens? You have to do it and send it over to them. Yeah, and I have to make sure I guess the right amount, otherwise I go to jail.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like I get so stressed out about it too that because this isn't. I'm an artist for a living, so this isn't my area of expertise, and just the financial mumbo jumbo language and government, Schedule C, Form 1099 KT. It's like, what? How am I supposed to know what this stuff is? It's crazy.
Luckily, I have enough kids that it kind of helps out with the tax situation. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, well, I have 4 of these things, and they're like, oh, okay, well, we'll give you a little money for each of them. I feel like they're buying my children, though.
Yeah, I don't have any of that going for me, but whatever. The longer we talk about it, the more angry I'm gonna get. So why don't we get into the first story?
First off, I did want to just say you're officially becoming permanent co-host of this show, and I feel like we should celebrate that in some way.
What did you have in mind?
I don't know. Maybe if you said yeehaw or something.
Oh,
something American.
You don't know me very well if you think I'm going to say anything like that.
Well, I mean, you could say yee if you really wanted to.
Yeah, and you say permanent co-host, but that's just until I succumb to the coronavirus that's just coursing through my veins right now. I'm convinced of it.
Well, that's the thing, because since I live in this stupid city, because all cities are stupid, I know that I've come in contact with it because there's just no way that I haven't. You know what I mean? There are too many people here in too close a proximity for me not to have. And then 2 or 3 weeks ago, my whole family got sick. And now I'm going, well, those symptoms look a lot like what we had. Did I have the coronavirus?
See, they have you right where they want you, dude. They want you panicking like this.
Well, what's funny is I'm not panicking. I'm good. But I go to the store because I'm not one to panic, and I just want to get a corned beef brisket so that I can make some Irish food on St. Patrick's Day this week. And I swear to God, I've never been to such an empty Costco in my life.
When did you go?
Today.
Just today. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, because I'm not panicking. I bought water last week. I got toilet paper 2 months ago from Costco, so we're still good for a couple months. And so I'm not freaking out. I just want to get some groceries for this week. And it's like Costco normally has in the back this giant wall of paper towels, toilet paper, etc. All of that was gone.
Yeah.
And they had made an kind of impromptu garden center in the back of the Costco. They also ran out of all chicken. So like chicken breasts, things like that. So where the chicken normally was in Costco, which we were going to get some because, it's a normal week, need some chicken. And they had all the kombucha that they couldn't sell where the chicken normally is.
So how long do you think your food supplies are going to last at this point? Do you have like reserves to last you a while, or are you just kind of playing it by ear and you got a couple weeks or something?
I mean, I've got a couple weeks of food, but I'm not a prepper.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of much. And so it's like, I have a normal amount of food.
Yeah, we do too. Like everything. We live in Charleston, and every year we get hurricanes that everybody starts freaking out about. So we're kind of used to acting as though we're going to prep for something, and then when it comes down to it, we just go and we buy like a ton of snacks, like like potato chips and tasty cakes and stuff. Which, by the way, now that you're in Pennsylvania, actually in Allentown, you guys have to have all the varieties of tasty cakes available to you. And let me tell you something. You got to try them all, dude, because we don't... I grew up in Pennsylvania. We do not have tasty cakes in Charleston. Sometimes we get like the little packs of donuts or other things. But tasty cakes, like, miss me with that Hostess garbage. Little Debbie, get real. Tasty cakes are by far where it's at. In fact, I should quit this podcast and just do a podcast about tasty cakes, because I could talk about them all day long. So anyway, you're living where you have easy access to them, and you need to take advantage.
Do you want me to send you some tasty cakes?
Ordinarily I would say yes, but you just told me that you have coronavirus, A. And B, believe it or not, my mom periodically sends down like a care package to us with like a huge box just packed with all kinds of different tasty cakes, and it lasts us a while. Every once in a while, I'll just the UPS guy will show up, or the post office dude, and I'll go out and there'll just be like a giant box filled with tasty cakes. It's pretty awesome.
Well, that's my thing, is when I've been in different areas, visiting, living, whatever, I always try to find the local food and try it. And so one of the things that I've noticed in a lot of stores here is ring bologna. I never saw ring bologna down in the South. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't even know what it is.
I've never seen so much ring bologna in my life. It's like, do you know what summer sausage is?
I've heard it, but I don't know what it is. I've heard of it.
Well, it's just a long bologna that you cut up yourself here. Mm-hmm. And today I was like, well, this kind of weirds me out, but I got one so I could try it. It's pretty good. That's the whole point. I tried weird bologna today, and I wanted you to know that.
It's funny that we're talking about bologna, because my wife and I, like a couple weeks ago, we were just like, you know what we should get? Some bologna from the deli counter. Like, we never eat bologna, but like we just got a hankering for some deli counter bologna. And we got like a half pound, and we blew through it so fast because it was so good to us. So we went back and got like another full pound. We blew through that. We're like obsessed with bologna all of a sudden out of nowhere.
Have you ever done fried bologna?
Oh, yeah. When I was a kid,
okay, good.
All the time.
Well, one of the things that my mom would make when we were especially poor that week was what she'd call bologna boats. Do you know what a bologna boat is?
No.
Okay, so when you make fried bologna, you essentially cut like 3 to 4 corners so that it stays flat when you're cooking it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you make bologna boats, you don't cut it so that it makes a cup shape. And so when you're poor and you don't have a lot of money, what your mom does is she makes a bologna cup, a bologna boat, puts mashed potatoes in it and cheese on top, and that's a cheap dinner.
Oh my God, that sounds delicious to me.
You should try it. It's good, but it's one of the better uses of Alabama steak.
Yeah, that sounds like right up my alley. I don't have fancy tastes at all.
It was so funny because when we'd have those moments and we had our poor times when I was younger, like we would get, I forget what it was, but it was something middle of the road, and my dad was like, "Boy, you've got champagne tastes on a beer budget," and I was like, "No, Dad, I have beer tastes on a water budget," and he was like, "Well, I hate you." No, he didn't say that. That he waited to tell me that he hated me for many more years.
Well, now I'm uncomfortable, and you've derailed this whole thing. I quit.
You should feel uncomfortable. As uncomfortable as I felt when my dad told me he didn't love me anymore.
Oh my God. Well, that's the show. Bye, everybody.
So, first story is just a follow-up from last week when we talked about Weinstein's sexy body.
Mm-hmm.
He actually was sentenced just right after we recorded that episode. It was from 5 to 25 years, and they chose 23 years. So they almost maxed him out.
Why wouldn't they?
I don't know.
You haven't read any reasoning behind that? That didn't even occur to me until you just said it.
Well, I know that this was really the first Me Too guy, first guy who got caught up in the Me Too movement. And it's really kind of a watershed moment for that movement. And so they were really pushing for the maximum sentence, which I read somewhere that was actually 29 years, but I saw 25. So I'm going with what I read originally, which is 25. But like, if I had to guess, I would say that the judge who sentenced him wanted to take it down just a little bit so it didn't look like he was just caving to the Me Too people. But I don't know. I haven't read any theories to that. People just kind of took it as it was.
Well, I'm glad to hear that he got close to the maximum. What a creep that dude is.
Did you see like the pictures of him or videos when he was actually in the courtroom?
I did see some, yeah.
Because he went from like being able to walk to using a walker to move around, I guess, to make himself look weaker. And then when he was being sentenced, he was wheeled in using a wheelchair.
What the heck is going on? You think this was all just a ploy?
Well, I do think that defense lawyers are smart enough to try to make their clients as sympathetic as possible. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like that's probably a part of it, is they wanted him to appear sympathetic. But they also said that he's kind of been going between Rikers and the doctor because he had to have some stent surgery. There's no telling, but of course that's always something they want. They want someone who looks weak and can't handle 23 years in prison.
Right. Wow.
One of the things that was interesting to me is, what was that guy's name? Is it Isaac Cappy? Anthony Cappy?
Isaac. Yeah, Isaac Cappy.
Isaac. Okay, I got it right the first time. You introduced me to him, but he was one of those that was outing pedophiles in Hollywood, including, who was it?
Seth Green. Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to talk about that a little bit and then it totally slipped my mind until now. But yeah, Seth Green, and the other one was the guy that directed Guardians of the Galaxy, Gunn. Well, I don't remember
James
his first
Gunn.
name. Yeah, James Gunn, yeah. So he was like outing people on Twitter and in some like YouTube videos and stuff. And Isaac Cappy, most people probably wouldn't recognize the name at all, but he is an actor and he has done some like small bit parts in some movies. Like apparently,
was he in Thor?
Yeah, so apparently he was in the first Thor movie and he was just played like a store clerk or something. But he's kind of like, he's been in stuff here and there. I think one of those, I don't know, like beer fest movies or something. I don't remember. So he's been in a few things. So he's kind of in Hollywood circles. And yeah, he just started calling people out, and then he winds up dead under very mysterious circumstances that a lot of people just really don't think it adds up. He's got, he had some problems, I don't think, he didn't quite have his life together, I don't think, but the way that he was found, and I think they ruled it a suicide, just seemed suspicious at the time, especially after all the people that he was outing.
It's funny how that happens.
Yeah, seems to happen a lot with the Clintons particularly.
Yeah. Like, I don't, like, what's his name? Who was the guy in the Clinton administration who killed himself? Vince Foster. It was really interesting that Vince Foster was the point man for the Waco massacre, and then he ended up dead. And then a box of files about the Waco massacre were taken out of his office by the chief of staff to Hillary Clinton and delivered to the presidential residence. They just happened to be taken out the day that he died.
How interesting. Yeah, dude, there's so much shady shit that goes on, and I have to say that I think, this isn't a unique take, obviously. I think most people probably feel this way, but, with the Weinstein thing and, Isaac Cappy and stuff, I think this pedophilia stuff is pervasive in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot more people could be outed, and, I don't know that people are going to come forward, with things like what's going on with Isaac Cappy, or what happened to Isaac Cappy. But we did just have that Corey Feldman movie a few days ago. Yeah,
which apparently started playing and then stopped.
Yeah, I read about that. Now, I wasn't going to pay whatever the exorbitant fee was.
I think it was $20.
I figured I'll procure it by other means when the time comes. But yeah, I heard some shady stuff went on with that. And then the other thing is that Feldman, he had been saying, like, I'm going to name names. And the name that he ends up naming is Charlie Sheen, who he claims raped Corey Haim when Charlie Sheen was like 19 and Haim was like 14. But we had actually heard that accusation before. That wasn't anything new.
Yeah. Apparently there was nothing new, and it was just that it's one of those things where I do believe there's some pedophilia stuff going on. I feel like it's pretty apparent that there are people in Hollywood, elites, and people with a lot of money with strange tastes, evil tastes, depraved tastes, who have the money to get what they want. But I hate that it's Corey Feldman. I mean, it's very clear that that kid was touched because of how weird he is. But it's like, it's hard to legitimize anything around Corey Feldman.
Right. If you're looking for a little bit of a deeper dive into that kind of stuff, have you seen, there's a movie called, I believe it's called An Open Secret, and it's a documentary that was made about pedophilia in Hollywood, and I assume it probably names some of the same names that Feldman did in his documentary, but this came out years ago, like 4 years ago. And it's actually a really well done documentary, but they couldn't get funding for it, to release it for a broad release, which doesn't surprise.
They couldn't get distribution.
Yeah, which doesn't surprise me. But it is available on Vimeo. So if you search for An Open Secret on Vimeo, you can watch that documentary, and man, it's tough to watch at times. There's interviews with a bunch of child actors, and like I said, I think it kind of runs deep in Hollywood, and hopefully more of it comes to light. I don't know why I'm so, I don't know that I'm fascinated by it, but it's something that has my attention, and I'm constantly kind of looking into it. I think one of the reasons is that I'm kind of like anti-celebrity culture, like this fascination that we have with celebrity, and the way people revere celebrities. So like anytime the stuff like this comes out and we can knock them down a peg, I'm pretty happy about it.
Well, yeah, and what I'll do is I'll try to find a link to that, and I'll actually put it in the show notes. So if anyone wants to watch that, I'll have a link to it in the show notes for them to find. But yeah, you know who I think was probably mishandled as a kid, as a child actor, who I really wish he would say something. Macaulay Culkin.
Really?
Yeah.
I think
Macaulay Culkin. Look at that guy.
I know. I think everybody feels that way about him, man. Like, he got so weird for so long. And remember the thing in the 90s where he like emancipated himself from his family, from his parents?
I didn't remember that, but it would make sense.
Yeah, I swear that there was a thing where he like it was a big thing, like Macaulay Culkin divorces his parents. But yeah, he's definitely been through some stuff, and like so many child
he was
actors.
really close with Michael Jackson.
Oh yeah. Oh, that documentary. I couldn't even get through it. I had to turn it off after a while.
I didn't finish it.
Yeah. It's that's a
But no,
tough one.
you know that guy has some stories to tell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for years he looked like he was on meth, and he looked like a homeless person, and now he's kind of turning his life around, it seems. And I forget what it was. He was in some show not that long ago, and I was like, wow, he actually is looking like a human being again.
Yeah, for a while he did not.
Yeah, he also decided, I thought it was funny, like last year he decided to have a poll because he was going to change his middle name because he didn't like what it was. I forget what his middle name was, but he was going to change his middle name. And so he had people vote on what his new middle name should be. And the people landed on his new middle name being Macaulay Culkin. So he has said that he is going to legally change his name to Macaulay Culkin.
That's awesome.
And I think that's great.
Yeah, that's pretty good. If you're looking, this is all pretty depressing stuff that we're talking about, but on the brighter side of Macaulay Culkin history, there's a show on Netflix. I think it's called The Movies That Made Us. And there's an episode about Home Alone and the production and all the kind of the nonsense that they had to go through to make that movie. And it's actually pretty interesting. Yeah. They had to jump through some hoops to even get it made, and nobody thought it was going to be successful. And then in the end, it turns into one of the biggest Christmas movies of all time. Not
to mention that in the second movie, the president is in it.
Yeah, I know.
And people, right after Trump was elected and it hit Christmas season, so right after November of 2016, people popped in Home Alone 2 and they go, shit.
Yeah. They were petitioning some of the stations to edit him out of the movie. Ridiculous. That's Trump derangement syndrome at its finest. Like, we can't even, you have to edit him out of our movies. We can't even look at him anymore. Pathetic.
But speaking of Trump derangement syndrome, I do think we should just do a real quick update on the Democratic field.
Yep.
And what's going on there. Did you like that segue?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't make any sense because you said, speaking of Trump derangement syndrome, let's talk about the primaries.
The Democratic primaries.
I think that's a stretch. I don't know.
Yeah, well, how many Democrats have Trump derangement syndrome?
Be better is all I'm saying. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
So the basics are boring as hell. Biden's still in the lead by about 150 delegates. They have to hit 1,991 to actually get nominated on the first ballot, blah, blah, blah. Tulsi Gabbard now has 2 delegates. But yeah, I mean, it's boring because it's the primaries. But there are some interesting stories around it that I'd love to touch on. I know I say it a lot, but it comes from Michael Malice, but the corporate press is the enemy of the people. Mm-hmm. And this last week, which is weird because the story was actually put out, it looked like on February 18th, but the Washington Post put out an opinion piece, an op-ed, that was titled, "It's Time to Give the Elites a Bigger Say in Choosing the President." F
off. And then didn't they promptly change the headline? There was so much outrage over that headline that they changed it?
Yeah, they did change it to "It's time to switch to preference primaries."
Right.
Which is a lot. I mean, I feel like what was so beautiful about the original headline is that mask of objectivity and not being the enemy. just started to slip.
Exactly.
They were telling the truth for a second.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually read through that article, and the argument is that essentially, if you boil it down, is that the primary system as it is right now doesn't work. It shows which candidates might be able to work hard enough and get the votes to become president, but you end up with bad candidates. See Donald Trump in 2016. So it's time to let the elites do a little bit more. And essentially, the article is saying that they should have non-binding primaries for the Democrats so that they can list their preferences from 1 to 10 or 1 to 20 or whatever. And then they give those to the delegates who end up being the ones who vote, but they're not, like I said, they're not bound to the people's choice.
Right. So this woman who wrote this article has decided that the system is rigged right now because we have all this super delegate nonsense, which is basically, if I recall correctly, how Hillary Clinton got nominated. But it's not rigged well enough for the elites. So let's rig it a little better and we'll just outright say that all delegates get to choose who the nominee is going to be, and they're not bound to their constituency.
Right. What they're saying is we can't let Bernie Sanders happen again. He's gotten too close too many times now.
Yes.
We can't let this happen.
Yeah. And this article, if I recall correctly, it was written back when Sanders had some momentum.
Was winning.
So
yeah.
If she had just waited a couple weeks until now, where Biden is the clear front runner and likely, in all likelihood, going to win the nomination, she wouldn't have had to have let the mask slip a little bit, which, this article would not have been written and the mask would still be firmly in place.
And I as I was reading it, because, it's an op-ed and they changed the name of it, I was like, maybe the meat of the article isn't as bad as the headline.
Mm-hmm.
But it is. I mean, she literally said that the elites should have more say. And I'm like, the Democrats and the left and, labor in England, all that crap, it's supposed to be the party of the middle class and the working class, like the people who are fighting to live, and they're supposed to be the champions, blah, blah, blah. Like, those people are scared of words like the elites.
Mm.
That's why Bernie Sanders is doing as well as he is, because there are a lot of people who hate the elites for very good reason.
Right.
So it's like, not only are these people, the corporate press, not only are they the enemy of the people, and they have their agenda and they're going to push their agenda. I mean, even if it's obvious.
So they have really become the party of the elites. They're the party of the limousine liberals now, which is why I think Trump picked up a lot of that middle America vote in 2016 that would have trended toward a Democrat, toward like a pro-union Democrat, right? But they keep doubling down on this elite social justice
mindset.
Warrior nonsense, and they're losing what used to be their base. What was their base when we were kids?
Right. Well, and if you actually look in the UK, Boris Johnson won as the prime minister this last election not that long ago, and Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, lost. And the Labour Party, who is just like the Democrats are supposed to be, the party of the people, the party of the working class. Well, Jeremy Corbyn, first off, is a Stalinist. Like, he's straight up authoritarian leftist. But they lost the worst that they have ever lost since 1938.
And do you think that that's going to play out similarly in 2020 here? I think that the Democrats are going to be blindsided again in this election because they just keep doubling down on this, Trump derangement syndrome nonsense. And we talked about this the last episode. They keep doubling down on all this stuff that's not working.
Well, yeah, and I think that Boris Johnson, he won because of Brexit, because of how bad Jeremy Corbyn was, and because of what Trump did over here. And I think that he actually stepped down. Jeremy Corbyn did. So the Labour Party is trying to pick themselves up. And so they hired some women kind of took over the reins after Jeremy Corbyn left. And they essentially went with the uber social justice route and were taking up for trans rights and this, that, and the other. And that's failing on them as well. And I think that they and the Democrats, they're paying attention to the vocal minority instead of paying attention to the people who are working hard, who are having a hard time as farmers, as factory workers, etc. And they're doing this far left, socially libertine, trans, gay, blah, blah, blah stuff that most people that are trying to get the votes from are just not interested in hearing about that.
Right. And it kind of makes sense with how modern politicians are so enamored and ensconced in, leftist Hollywood and the entertainment industry. So these uber leftist SJW bubbles in Hollywood and the entertainment industry and, television and all that stuff, that it's almost as though the politicians are following their lead and ignoring middle America, which is exactly, Trump went hard for middle America. Like he really spoke to middle America, to the people, the blue collar workers and talking about bringing jobs back to America and stuff. And the left just ignored them because to them, they thought they'd
clinched it.
Yeah, they thought they clinched it. And they thought that the prevailing voices on the left were all, more interested in trans rights and social justice, because they're in, like I said, they're in these, leftist Hollywood bubbles. And that's what those people believe. But that's not America. Look at these, what was this last award show with David Brent? I forget his real name. Ricky Gervais.
Golden Globes?
Yeah, and he just goes hard at Hollywood and just humiliates them. And when I was, looking at the, the Facebook posts afterward, shared by, news sites and stuff, just kind of sharing video clips of his jokes, people from all over the political spectrum were like, hell yeah, finally, like, put them in their place, what they deserve. That's where most of America is. Like, most of America, in my opinion, is not super concerned with all this social justice, this, what would you call it? We need a word to just describe that mindset besides social justice warriors.
Well, I mean, it's the evangelical left.
There you go.
Is what it is. And that's the thing. Like they really want for everyone in those areas, they want to keep the people that are in the unions and that are pro-union, but they haven't reprogrammed those people yet. They're trying to. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to make them NPCs that follow the SJW evangelical left line on everything. But they're not going to get it. The boomers aren't going to change their mind on Drag Queen Story Hour overnight.
Yeah, exactly. My eyes just glaze over when talking about electoral politics. I can't. Numma.
Well, that's the thing. The only good thing that comes out of electoral, because if you start to see it as like a show and you start to see it as a circus, as entertainment, mm-hmm. and you pull out the stories that are funny or that are interesting, it makes it so much better. If you're not being too serious, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people seriously try to determine if Bernie Sanders or Biden is going to win something, and that's so boring to me unless they start yelling at each other.
Yeah. Plus, Sanders doesn't stand a chance. I'm sorry. It's been the nominee has been chosen.
They're not going to let it happen. Yeah. And it's like one of the reporters went and talked to the cryptkeeper. The Congresswoman Maxine Waters about who she was going to endorse and are you going to endorse Biden? She was like, I'm not ready to endorse anyone yet. And she was like, well, it just depends on who can beat Trump in the election. And so the reporter asked, do you think Biden can beat Trump in the election? And she said, I don't know. We'll see. It's not a good look to have Maxine Waters, this cryptkeeper looking bitch, to say that she doesn't know if Biden can beat Trump.
Yeah, well, to be honest, does anybody listen to what that corpse says? Does anybody take her seriously? Why was she even being interviewed? Who has any interest in hearing what that woman has to say?
I couldn't tell you. But the last thing that has to do with electoral college or electoral politics, so we can get some of that glaze off your eyes, is, over the last 3 years, they've said that Russia interfered in the election and Russians interfered in the election, and how people from other countries shouldn't interfere in our elections, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've heard that a couple times.
Sure.
Well, there are some students in Canada who are campaigning for Bernie Sanders, and in my opinion, they can fuck off.
Yeah, they need to go away. Now, you mentioned this earlier that they have actually set up phone banks. First of all, if you are driving to a phone bank to actually cold call strangers on behalf of a reptilian politician, because let's be honest, they're all evil reptilians.
They're not human.
Then you've got some problems, man. Like, who...
Well, and as I was reading it, it seemed like it was less of a physical phone bank as much as it was, apparently there are no laws against people from other countries campaigning for our president or different candidates. And so they can go on Sanders' website and sign up and they'll be sent a list of phone numbers of Americans that they can call or text to campaign for Bernie Sanders.
Why do they want Bernie Sanders? Who are these people?
So the article that I'll link in the show notes, they are just uber leftist college students, and they feel like if Bernie Sanders wins, then that will make it possible for Canada to go even further left than they are right now.
Yeah, it's one step closer to their worldwide leftist utopia.
So, yeah, there are Canadians out there that are trying to get Bernie Sanders to win.
Yeah.
And honestly, I hope they get the coronavirus.
So, well, yeah, that's going to happen. I don't know if you saw this. I assume that you did, considering you made the document that we're referencing right now. The WHO says that the coronavirus is a pandemic. They have officially labeled it a pandemic, which they actually held off on for a little while, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, and one thing I really want to mention is, have you ever played the game Plague Inc.?
No, but I keep seeing it on my app store as trending.
Yeah, so Plague Inc. is a game where you get to choose to be a virus, bacteria, fungus, etc. And so you create a sickness that the goal is to infect everyone on the planet and then to kill them all with the disease. And so there is I found it today, and I'll if I can find it again, I'll send it to you. But there is a infographic, like an interactive infographic of coronavirus, who it's hit, what's happening, how many people have died, how many people have recovered, etc. And it looks way too much like the game Plague Inc.
Really?
Yeah, it looks way too much like it.
Yeah, it's crazy. I keep looking at those maps with the red blobs, and they're just growing and growing and growing. It's crazy.
It is officially a pandemic, yeah.
Yeah, which it's weird that, like, isn't there a textbook definition for the word pandemic? I mean, it's been a pandemic for a little while now, right? Isn't it? It's all continents or something? Yeah,
and I think it has to have a certain level of not infectivity. That's not a word, I don't think. Is it?
No.
Infectiousness
is what I would think.
I don't know, but yeah, I don't. Let's Google it. Let me Google it.
I just did. It says pandemic, adjective of a disease prevalent over a whole country or the world.
So yeah, it's been since it was in China. It's been a pandemic.
Yeah, apparently. But yeah, so they have officially started actually using the word pandemic. It's getting pretty sketchy out there, and like I don't know, I don't know what to believe because the media wants to sensationalize it so much. And in fact, just as an aside, I mentioned this to you briefly earlier today, but you have the people that are panicking over this, and then you have all the people that are saying that the media is purposely sensationalizing it, right?
Yeah.
My default kind of position on that was that Yeah, the media is sensationalizing a little bit, but I think it's more of kind of a natural acceleration of the story rather than they're sensationalizing it with any real ill intent.
You'd think. Unless you're red-pilled.
Right, exactly. So, I kind of thought it was just the natural momentum of the story. Everybody's talking about it and stuff. But then I open up my Google News app earlier today, and I never opened that app up. In fact, this may have been the first time. And I just checked it out, and every headline on the front page was about coronavirus, and it was every organization was like in hyperdrive spin mode to use this pandemic to make Trump look as bad as possible. It was like none of the stories were, just general coronavirus information when I looked at it. It was all about Trump and how he's doing a horrible job managing this and how his presser was ridiculous and all this stuff. And it's like, now I believe that, they may be sensationalizing this just to use it as ammunition against the guy that they don't want in the White House.
Yeah, and there was a tweet that I shared that I can't find right now, but dadgummit, I hate it when that happens. But it was a list of things because people are trying to use it to their advantage, and it was like what coronavirus is teaching us right now, and it was like we need Medicare for all.
Yeah,
we need and it was just this list of progressive causes, and I was like, it's almost like someone might get the idea that this was engineered so that you could make this point.
Yeah, and you're probably referring to them engineering the story, but I actually do believe that this virus was engineered by the Chinese, and I think it got out. I don't think they meant to let it out, but that whole story about eating some bat in a Chinese wet market, I don't buy that.
I reported on that, and I just wanted to talk about bat butthole soup. Yeah. But I found the tweet. It was from a guy named Skylar Johnson, and he said, "Schools are closing. Where do I send my children? How do I afford healthcare? I can't afford to take off work. I don't have guaranteed housing if I leave school. The issues the virus is causing are literally everything progressives have been trying to fix for years."
Oh, smug douchebag.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I believe that there are conspiracies, but I'm not a tinfoil hat.
Right. Yep, me too.
And so it's one of those things where, if you show me enough evidence, I'll be like, okay, so that probably happened. But I'm not looking for. I mean, the fact that it came out of Wuhan, China, where they have a biological weapons laboratory, is a little convenient.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
There's a lot of stuff, but what's funny is the corporate media, they've also shifted, because you remember they changed the official name from everyone calling it coronavirus to calling it COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately I hated that. But I didn't know why. I didn't know why they changed it. But all I knew is they are suddenly changing the parlance, and there has to be an agenda behind that. Apparently, people were calling it the Chinese coronavirus or the Wuhan coronavirus. And apparently, according to the World Health Organization, that's a part of the UN, that's racist.
Well, what isn't racist these days?
Well, yeah, when you realize that the left, the religion of the left, the progressive religion is based around racism, and that racism and slavery are original sin. Mm-hmm. They find a way to make that part of their talking points no matter what. Right. So for months, they've been calling it the Wuhan coronavirus or the Chinese coronavirus, and then they changed it to COVID-19. And now, what's that guy's name? Chris Cuomo, the guy who's on MSNBC or CNN, one of those leftist rags. Fredo was on the air with someone, and they were talking about how racist it was to call it the Wuhan virus or the coronavirus, and how Republicans can't get past their racism to stop calling it that. When for months, that guy and everyone else on their team called it the Wuhan virus or the Chinese coronavirus.
God, and that kind of that's so. I think I mentioned last week on the show that my journey to libertarianism was by way of conservatism, and I was a Republican for a while, and I don't really consider myself conservative or a Republican anymore. I just consider myself a libertarian, but. Yeah. My God, I still cannot stand the left. I can tolerate the right, but the left, my big issue with them is this attitude that they have the moral high ground in every issue.
Yep.
And everything comes down to race and, they're standing up for the little guy and they have the moral authority, and that kind of just smug attitude that they bring into every issue, down to the fact that people on the right are referring to it as the Wuhan coronavirus, where, like you said, everybody had been doing that for months, but they bring that smug, condescending, moral high ground attitude into it, and it just drives me up a wall, dude.
Well, they were literally condescending to the president for calling the virus foreign, for stating that it came from a place other than the United States, which, by the way, the Chinese are claiming that Trump brought it to China.
I was just thinking today, what if Trump was patient zero? What if he was like, I had a very nice Chinaman make me a bowl of bat soup in a China wet market, and he was the one that just kicked this whole thing off, but it was just like he was, kind of a buffoon and didn't realize what he was doing. And now we have this global pandemic.
Well, there was a guy, I forget where he was from, some foreign guy that was linked to an ambassador, went and spoke to the president and shook his hand. And then 2 days later, he was diagnosed with the coronavirus.
Yeah, it was a Brazilian guy, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then a couple days later, I saw that there was another person that was within somewhere around Trump as well who had the coronavirus, and he'd coughed on his hand and then shook the president's hand.
God.
And I learned this online on Twitter. And so when I saw the pictures and I saw this guy that had done this on accident, I then noticed that the NPCs on Twitter were calling the man a national hero for possibly infecting the president.
Oh my gosh. I can't stand him. I can't. Trump derangement syndrome strikes again.
But he did get tested, and apparently he doesn't have it. So, but I did joke around with people saying that I thought that the coronavirus was just a plot to kill the president.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it does seem to be specifically engineered to take out boomers, right? That's.
Yeah. And Generation Z, they're calling it the boomer remover. And that's my favorite thing.
Yeah. You mentioned that to me earlier, and I already have started throwing it around Facebook. I've already commented with that name in multiple threads.
I wish I could claim that I made it up, but I saw it and it was from someone in Gen Z, and I was like, God, that's so good.
Yeah. I know, like one of my friends today posted, he was all upset because they canceled the Masters tournament. And I was like, well, if there's anywhere that you want to be careful about the boomer remover running rampant, it would probably be at a golf tournament, right?
Yeah.
That'd wipe out 90% of the organization.
Yeah, that's how you kill my grandfather too.
What?
I said that's how you kill my grandfather too, because he's just golf man. That's his whole, every house he's lived in has been within walking distance of a golf course.
Yeah, I played a little bit when I was younger, but I don't get the appeal. I guess as you get older, it's you're not going to be running around a basketball court anymore. So maybe that's why. Boomers like it so much.
I was curious about it as a kid, but then my grandfather decided to teach me, and he's the most perfectionist person on the planet, and he would not let me swing the club until my hands were perfectly placed on the club. He would, and then once I finally got that, he wouldn't let me hit the ball until my practice swing was just right, and so he talked me right out of it.
Yeah, it just sucks all the fun out of it.
But there is a lot of worry about the coronavirus. The president he's stopped travel coming from Europe and from Italy, and he even included the UK and Ireland. But they're trying to get this to stop spreading, and they're refusing people the ability to come over here from other countries, which isn't the worst thing that will happen. I feel like things are going to get worse before they get better. If you look at Italy, they have essentially gone to martial law, and people who are found to have the virus are quarantined to their houses, mandatory quarantine.
Right, and the healthcare system is completely overwhelmed. The return of death panels, essentially.
Right, and I read just like maybe 20 minutes before we started talking that they are actually telling people that there should be an age limit on ICU entrance. But there was one woman who was quarantined with her husband in Italy, and her husband died of the coronavirus, and she was stuck in the house with her dead husband for 2 days.
Awful. Apparently the official, I believe it was the mayor of whatever city they're in, said that this wouldn't have happened if he didn't refuse to get to be transferred to a hospital. So the guy apparently contracted the virus. They said, we need to get you to a hospital. He said no. He died in the house. According to the whatever regulations they have going on right now, they couldn't go in to remove him for 2 days.
Yeah, they couldn't touch the body.
Right. So the essence of that story is that a boomer was typical boomer stubborn about going to the hospital, and it led to this horrible series of events. I don't know what it is about boomers.
And the poor woman. The poor woman was out on her balcony screaming for help, and they're just like, we can't come in. And you know that it's easy for things to devolve, and people are ridiculous even here. And like they canceled the NBA season, right? What else that you said they canceled? I think they
Masters.
I think they've now canceled. Masters. I think they've now canceled hockey.
Right. The big one for me, the only one that I really care about is the Australian Grand Prix for Formula One was canceled, and at this rate, I'm sure that many more races are going to be canceled.
Oh, there's going to. Georgia and Louisiana canceled their primaries.
Yeah.
So they're not going to have their Democratic primaries. They actually pushed them off. Georgia's was supposed to be in March, and now it won't be till May 19th. And Louisiana's was supposed to be like April 4th, and now that one won't be till June 20th. Which, if I remember correctly, the DNC the National Convention typically happens in June.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, as my eyes start to reglaze because we're talking about this crap again, imagine what this is doing to the campaigns. So Biden, I don't think we actually touched on this earlier, but didn't Biden say that he's going to start doing virtual town halls or virtual campaign events? Yeah,
and he's done some live streaming, and my God, he sounds like an idiot there too. Like it's even worse than his debate performances.
Dude. So I gotta tell you, I think most of these national politicians are pretty evil, but there's a part of me listening to Biden the last few weeks that I'm starting to feel bad for him because he's deteriorating before our eyes.
Well, he's not the most evil one out there. He's not Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, if it was Hillary, I wouldn't feel bad.
I think that they're all evil, but I think that, and I do feel bad for him, but at the same time, it's such a perfect object lesson about how the state works, how the deep state works, how the establishment gets their way. And it's crazy because the thing that you need to watch out for is all the coverage that corporate media is going to put out for Biden. So it was like when he was on stage in the debates and couldn't remember Obama's name, or when he was he confused his wife for his sister, or all these other things. And they may have been jokes. Some of these things may have been taken out of context, sure. But you'll watch the corporate media immediately make excuses for him. So when he couldn't remember Obama's name, after being in the public life for 39 years or something like that. Since he was 29 years old, Biden has been in public office. And he never had an issue with a stutter. But the corporate media, when he started having trouble with his words, they started saying, oh, well, he had an issue with a stutter when he was younger. And that's all you're hearing is he has an issue with a stutter. You wouldn't make fun of Sully, would you?
Yeah, when he was like, what are you talking about? An issue with a stutter? So he's been out in the public eye since what you said, 29 years old? So when was the stutter? When he was 12? Yeah. I think he's overcome it.
Well, and it's just, yeah, and and what's funny is there was one place where someone had made that claim and he was like, I don't have a stutter. And you know that reporter was going, shut up, old man. We're trying to help you.
Yeah. And it's like, a lot of the stuff that really kind of makes me feel bad for him has nothing to do with a stutter. I mean, he's just, it's almost like he's speaking nonsense. Like it's just not, he's not making any sense.
Did you see that debate or town hall he was in when something in his eye popped and his whole eye filled with blood?
Yeah. Strange.
Yeah. And it's like, this is an old man. If he becomes president, right now, the oldest president that entered office is Trump. Before that, it was Ronald Reagan, who I think was 69, and Trump was 70. And if Biden wins, I want to say he'll be like 78.
Oh my gosh.
Is that right? Let me check. Yeah. Yep, I was right. Yeah, if he becomes president, he'll be 78 years old. The absolute oldest president ever.
My God. I mean, think about that. Think about an 80-year-old man in office.
Right. And I mean, and what's his name? Sanders isn't that far behind him either.
Wow. Well, regardless of his age, I don't think he stands a chance anyway. I think it's...
Well, Bernie Sanders is already 78. It's
funny, God. Isn't this the party that, we're
it's a party of young people.
Yeah, and aren't they always talking about getting away from straight old white men making all of the decisions? And these are the guys that are the front runners for their party.
Like literally the oldest white men you could find.
My God.
But yeah, the coronavirus is probably going to kill Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I got to say, with the coronavirus, it's like, I don't, based on everything I know about it right now, like, I'm not concerned about the virus at all. For somebody, my age, your age, whatever. I am a little concerned about it with people my parents' age. They're in their 70s.
Yeah.
So I think that they do need to be careful. But the thing that I'm most concerned about is what you were talking about, how you think it's going to get worse before it gets better. And you were talking about Italy essentially in martial law right now. And I was thinking about, they made this quarantine zone in New York. And, if they continue doing that kind of stuff, that's where violence kicks off. When you start fencing people in and telling them you can't leave this area, that's when things start getting testy and things start getting violent. It's those kinds of ramifications that I'm more concerned about than anything.
Oh, yeah. I've been saying for days that the panic is far more dangerous than the illness.
Right. And, a close second on my list of concerns about it is, and maybe it should be number one, is how the state is going to use this to curtail more of our freedoms. What is going to be the coronavirus equivalent of the Patriot Act?
Right. Well, and what's funny is there are those little. Do you know QAnon, the conspiracy theory
the movement type thing? Yeah. So I'm a little familiar with them. I don't really know much about what they believe.
I don't know much either. But I was on Instagram the other day. Well, actually, my wife was, and she sent me screenshots because I hate Instagram so much. But there was this woman who was like, oh, don't be afraid of the coronavirus. This is a secret military coup that President Trump is using to get rid of all the pedophiles and all of the bad guys that are controlling all of us. And the power is going to go directly back to the people because of the coronavirus.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen.
And I'm like, you nutbags.
I know. And it's those tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists that make us all look bad. All I'm saying is that the virus was engineered in biological research center, whatever it is, in Wuhan. My conspiracy theory is pretty reasonable by comparison.
Yeah, definitely is. And I'm pretty sure it's just true.
Yeah.
I mean, there's even some talk about they ran a simulation of a coronavirus not that long ago.
Yeah,
before it started getting out.
So there's all kinds of little details that are just it's too much to overlook. They don't come to the front of my mind right now, but there's all these little details like where it occurred and some things that kind of led up to it occurring. And there's this podcast that I listen to periodically called Mysterious Universe, and it's kind of just a fun, goofy podcast about all kinds of stuff from like aliens to just the paranormal and stuff. But the guys they're pretty well grounded usually. They don't necessarily believe all of these kooky conspiracy theories. It's usually more about entertainment. But in the beginnings of their shows for the last few weeks, they have been covering the coronavirus, and they've been talking about all these little coincidences that kind of make it look like something more than just an accident. So, yeah, I definitely believe it.
I wouldn't be surprised. But do you want to talk about some sad shit before we finish up?
I guess. This has been... I started my day out with forking over a crap ton of money to the federal government, and now I'm going to end it on some sad news. It's a great Saturday for Chuck.
Saturday. But yeah, so there was some.
How about that delay and how long it took me to get that? I'm so tired right now. This episode has been a disaster. You better edit this to make us sound like not retarded.
I do it every time.
All right, good.
But yeah, so we found out this last week that Chelsea Manning, who was once Bradley Manning, the whistleblower that gave documents over to WikiLeaks and let the public know about some war crimes that our U.S. military had been perpetrating in Afghanistan and in other areas. Some background, if you don't know, Bradley at that point, he, who is now she, which I struggle with. I don't know about you, Chuck, but I struggle with the cognitive dissonance of calling a person that I have seen as a man she after the fact. Like my brain tells me that's a boy. And so I struggle with switching over and saying she.
Yeah,
not that I have anything against these people, but it's my brain goes, no. That's not what we know.
Right. Yeah. I am usually in the same boat, but I did not follow the story, so I've only ever really known her as Chelsea Manning. So I think I got it. I'll get it right, but the ACLU will be after you after this episode.
So back in 2013, Manning, who was then Bradley, now Chelsea, was a whistleblower. She took a bunch of documents from military sources and gave them to WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks disseminated them, and she was put in jail. Once she got into prison, then she moved from a he to a she and had 35 years in prison. And then Obama left office. Right before he left office, he commuted Manning's sentence. And then last year, they caught Julian Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy, and the U.S. wanted to indict Assange. And so they called Manning back into court to speak in front of a grand jury to give all of her testimony that said that she had worked with Assange and given him credentials so that he could get into and steal information from the United States federal government and their intelligence agencies. Manning said no, said that she would not do that again, that all of the information that she had given in her earlier court case was good enough and that they should share that, and refused the subpoena, refused to do anything that they wanted her to do. So at that point, the judge decided that he was going to put Manning in jail, and I think it was contempt of court, and that she would be in jail for as long as it took for her to come back and testify. And that every day that she refused to testify, they would charge her $1,000. So this last week, after being in jail for 250 days, Manning attempted suicide. This was the third time that Manning had attempted suicide while in jail, twice before when she was on her first 35-year stint. But she tried to hang herself, and then days later, the judge just happened to decide, oh, well, she tried to kill herself, so she can be out of jail now. We don't need her testimony. Was that a good putting it up in a little package?
Yeah.
Charlie?
Yep, I like your package. And
thank you.
It goes without saying, I suppose, that he pardoned her from having to testify, but she still owes that $250,000 as far as we know.
Yeah, no, I actually read that the judge said, yes, she can be let out of jail, but she has to pay back every single one of those $250,000.
Oh my gosh.
Which this is a person who was in the military and then went straight to prison for a 35-year stint and then went back to jail not that long after.
Right.
So this person is destitute. Manning doesn't have any money, much less $250,000.
Unbelievable. All for the crime of bringing to light American war crimes.
It's funny because you mention this to people that aren't pro-freedom, aren't pro-liberty, and people on the left that aren't remotely pro-liberty will say that Manning's a traitor. So will people on the right. But all during the impeachment thing, they were trying to say that Rand Paul was evil for mentioning the whistleblower's name about the Ukrainian phone call with the president. And they were like, oh, we're so pro-whistleblower. But all of these people, except for maybe a handful, are silent when it comes to Julian Assange, who was born in Australia, but the U.S. wants to bring him over and fry him. And Manning tries to kill herself, and they don't say a word. I'm sorry, it disgusts me, and I think you could tell in the change of my tone.
Yeah, this you really tanked the energy in here. So that's not that we had a whole lot of positive energy going into this. What did we talk about? Federal taxes, Weinstein, the Democrat primaries, which is just more boring than anything, the coronavirus, and now Chelsea Manning, which is a terrible story, but we're going to close out with yet another terrible story, one that is possibly even more maddening.
Yeah, I mean, I am glad that Chelsea Manning is no longer in prison, but you know, she tried to commit suicide, but at least she's still alive. The same cannot be said for Duncan Lemp, who was a guy in Maryland who I couldn't get any clear information on what he supposedly did.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that right now.
But the police broke into his house at 4:30 in the morning. He was asleep next to his pregnant girlfriend, and they broke in. They started shooting. They threw in 2 flashbang grenades, which are the flash. People think that flashbangs are just like little tiny balls that Batman throws and it makes a flash and it's it. But these are weapons. Mm-hmm. Flashbangs are what set the fire at Mount Carmel in Waco. And this story reminds me, it's like flashes of Waco. So this guy, Duncan Lemp, apparently at first the police were saying that it was because of, how did they put it?
Firearms offenses, I believe is what they said.
Firearms offenses.
Right.
And something that was just not specific at all. And really it looks like just a red flag law takedown that went wrong, like I'm sure all of them do.
Right.
So what's fun, and I know you read it too, the reporter that we read the story from went to the police to get the records. And the police let them know that in order to get those records, they had to go through the Maryland Public Information Act, which entitles government agencies to delay responding for weeks or months. And even the search warrant that the police had to enter his house is sealed for 30 days.
Right. So that's why kind of your details on the story are a little hazy right now. We're basically going off of what was initially said was the cause of them entering his home. Their initial claim was that they entered the house to serve a warrant over firearms offenses. But now they have sealed these documents, so we can't get all the information, which is essentially just kind of, in my opinion, a way to kind of let the story, the momentum that the story has, die out, you know? So they can hold this, like you said, this information for weeks or months, and you know how the news cycle is. This story is going to fizzle out over the course of weeks and months.
Not to mention, not to mention that they give cover to the police to build a wall. I mean, it's building a wall between us and the truth. And during that time, people who are bootlickers, blue line American flag waving copsuckers are going to be able to say, well, you don't know the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what he did. And so even if the story does continue because of the haziness of it, they have protection.
Right. So it buys them time. It buys them protection from those people. And it buys them time in terms of the story fizzling out, but it also buys them time in terms of, giving them an opportunity to really think about how they are going to tackle the questions that are going to come out about this, allow them to build a narrative, essentially.
Right.
So, yeah, that I had never heard of, what's it called? The Maryland what? Public Information Act?
Yeah.
I would like to look more into that because that seems like it's just a transparent way for them to be able to control news stories, before word gets out about the atrocities that they're committing.
Well, and I know you've seen this, but when police do something that they're proud of, they take pictures of it and they post it.
Right.
And so on Friday evening, the police department actually posted photos of 5 firearms that they seized during the raid, which all 5 of those firearms were completely legal. They weren't modified, but they didn't happen to post the photo of his bullet-ridden corpse. They kept that out of it for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
But they were happy to post photos of getting some guns from someone.
They also didn't post photos of his likely terrified and supposedly injured pregnant girlfriend who he was sleeping next to at the time.
Right. Well, I mean, it's amazing that they're willing to enter a house at 4:30 in the morning when people are asleep. And then they say that there were firearm offenses, and then they changed the story. They've already modified their story and asserted that Lemp had confronted the police officers, which could mean anything. Like, it could literally mean that he stood up in his room when police officers with guns entered it. It could have meant that he grabbed a gun, which he had every right to do. If a bunch of people with guns enter your room in the middle of the night at 4:30 in the morning, you grabbing a gun, I think that's fine.
Yeah, that
I don't know
seems
about you.
pretty reasonable to me.
But yeah, so they've already changed the story, and it's going to keep changing until they hit the one that totally justifies what they did.
Right. And, like we said, they've bought themselves time, and I would say that likely in the mainstream media, this story will kind of fizzle out. It won't be mentioned or circulated very much within the next few weeks, but luckily this seems to be gaining the attention of, liberty circles, the circles that we kind of spend time in. Hopefully those people will be able to kind of keep the story alive and really get to the bottom of what happened in the coming weeks and months, and it won't just disappear entirely.
No. Well, and just final things is apparently they were trying to find out why he was targeted, and one of the reasons was that he was a quote unquote prohibited person.
What does that mean?
It means he was permitted from or not permitted. He was prohibited from owning firearms. And that could literally just mean that he had a permit to use medical marijuana. And, of course, he was actually one of us. I mean, I don't know his history, but the last thing he tweeted before he died was that the Constitution is dead.
Mm-hmm. And,
I think he had talked about maybe militias or something. But if you're going to be shot by the police because of one of those stupid red flag laws, I can't imagine a better tweet to end it with, because that's true.
Yep, absolutely.
So, unfortunately, we have to leave this on a sad note. But again, Chuck, thank you for joining me to talk about sad stuff and things that make your eyes glaze over.
Yeah, maybe next week we should kind of flop this. We'll end on the more positive stuff. Like, well, I guess it wasn't positive, but it was. Never mind. We opened up with pedophilia. Never mind. I was so excited to talk about Weinstein. My brain thinks that it's a positive story, but it's not.
But yeah, next week I will find a stupid story for us to end on. I just forgot to do it. But yeah, with that, thank you guys for listening. You can find me and Charlie on Twitter. I'm the only one who's going to do it, but I'll send him the highlights. But you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon. If you just type in "This is MLGA." If you'd like to email us, send one to thisismlga@mlganetwork.com. So hit us up, send us some funny stories so that we don't kill ourselves after we record. While you're at it, check out all of the other shows on the MLGA network. I'm not going to name them this time, but thank you. Thank you, Chuck. You guys stay sane.
See ya.